Alright guys, so today we're going to be talking about one of the most anticipated battles in Jujutsu Kaisen, and that's going to be Sukuna versus Gojo. This is one we've been waiting on for years, chapters, and for my anime viewers, episodes, but we're finally arriving at what seems to be the apex or the pinnacle of the story, and we know what that looks like. It's going to be a battle of the strongest Jujutsu sorcerers, and of course that's going to be Sukuna versus Satoru Gojo. Now, what we're looking at here is of course some of the more powerful characters, and Gojo being essentially called the most powerful, with Sukuna, who's up in the air at the moment as the second most powerful, but is at least seems to be and is given as the author the second strongest character. But we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know how the final fight's going to play out. Kenjaku's still a factor. Yuji, the main character, is still a factor. And he has plans of his own of how to get stronger. Maki's there. Of course, Yuta, Hikari, who are all hyped up to be very important players moving forward. But as far as what the body of evidence is showing us, it does seem like Sukuna and Gojo are our two strongest players in this Jujutsu Sorcery game. So let's first investigate Sukuna, and he goes by Ryomen Sukuna as his full name, but more importantly, him being the main antagonist alongside Kenjaku and just one of the overarching bad guys since the beginning of the story. Now, he has incredible speed, strength, and durability, and he's known for his ability to manipulate cursed energy in a myriad of ways that aren't really conventional, especially with his domain, right? We know that he uses a domain expansion, but he doesn't actually have an enclosed sphere. He can use it in a sort of artistry type of way, as he's called a savant or a master of domains, and doesn't actually have to enclose, and can actually manipulate his domain to be used outside, of course, any closed structure. So he, with that, also has some of the most powerful curse techniques we've seen. His slash and dicing techniques, of course, are his most powerful. But he also has fire and what seems to be other curse techniques that he just hasn't used yet. So where does he stack compared to Gojo? Let's take a look at what Sukuna has going for him. Now, one of the major things that Sukuna goes on about is the fact that he does have more cursed energy that is growing what they call exponentially or in great amount by the day. Now, with the fingers growing, that does mean that when Gojo makes his original statement, he doesn't actually account for the fact of when he fights Sukuna in this equation, right? Because as more time goes along and the fingers grow by the day, he gets a multitude of them, he's only going to get stronger. Gojo can only account for what he knows in the time frame that he's talking about, and that's if they grow at some linear pace. If they grow exponentially over some time, Gojo can just lose count of the time, and Sukuna just simply outgrows him due to too much time passing between that original statement and when he's fighting now. Now, that does also assume that Gojo essentially was stagnant while he was inside the prison realm, but we're going to take a look at that in a moment. Now, if Sukuna grows until December 24th when they fight, that's an unknown period of time. Gojo wasn't expecting to fight Sukuna, right? He didn't know he was going to be stuck and trapped for however long and then have to fight him in a delayed battle later. So that earlier statement we can throw out for now, as it doesn't follow some exact timeline of Gojo fighting Sukuna. But he also has now Megumi's body, right? So he has the 10 Shadows techniques, which gives him an advantage because he now has a myriad of techniques, including the hailed Maharaga. Now, Maharaga was kind of a trump card when Megumi pulled him out, but it was also a double-edged sword because it essentially meant suicide, because Maharaga would kill anything in the vicinity. But Sukuna can control Maharaga, right? We saw that he was able to integrate his wheel on top of his head, as well as summon him freely and seal him and put him back when he wanted to, right? So now that's Sukuna and Maharaga that's fighting at the same time. And it's not to say that, Maharaga is too much of a threat, but he does also have that regen ability where if he regens enough, he's essentially invincible. And so that is something Gojo will have to consider, right? And I don't think he's a main threat to Gojo, but I do think that is something that he does need to keep in the back of his mind for when they fight. So now Sukuna has many more techniques with the 10 shadows, as well as the fact that he's fighting inside Megumi's body. If you think Gojo, who's cared for Megumi since he was a child, is going to fight him at full power, even if Sukuna is the face at the end of his body, you're out of your mind. He's just going to hold back until he can try to separate Sukuna from Megumi or seal him somehow. And I don't see Megumi really fighting back much, because there wasn't much of a fight that he put up, even when they fought in the last chapter, as well as when he fought his friends Yuji, Maki, and even his own sister, right? So there's going to be very little resistance, as far as I can tell, from Megumi. So it looks like Gojo's going to have to hold back in that fight. There's no way I believe he can go through with killing one of his favorite students and someone he's raised from such a young age. So that goes to tell us about Sukuna, and his abilities are pretty much summed up. It seems like Kenjaku was also relying on Sukuna, because he wasn't going to do much without him and was essentially praying for Sukuna to come and save him. And that is what happened. They clash for a bit, and we see some relativity between Gojo and Sukuna, at least physically. Now, of course, it'll come down to domain, you know, people's favorite thing. Gojo's invincible with domain, right? We're going to see that, right? If it truly is the case that no one can cross the boundary between his domain and that they're stuck infinitely with infinite information and overloaded, Gojo's trump card, he wins. But I doubt the writing is going to be that simple. That seems so cliche and played out, that he has this trump card he pulls out at the last moment and is the most overpowered character, and things go very simply. JJK is a lot of things, but it's not a story that's extremely predictable. And so I doubt that very cliche battle shonen trump really comes into play, or trope really comes into play later. But what we're also going to take a look at now is Gojo, and what makes Gojo so powerful, right? Now, Gojo is pretty much the overpowered anime guy in Jujutsu Kaisen. He's been hailed as the strongest since the debut of the series, and it's been fairly and confidently stated he's the strongest and can beat anyone, including Sukuna, especially from jump. Now, let's take a look at that statement from Gojo's side earlier. He says he can beat Sukuna. Now, he may have an equation that includes a linear increase with a relative time frame from when he would fight Sukuna, maybe even all the way up to 20 fingers. That's the saving grace here. He's fighting a 15-finger Sukuna versus when he may have been expecting to fight 20 fingers. And that may save him when we come down to it later. And he still believes he can beat Sukuna, of course, and that's 15 fingers, right? So that may be give him a little wiggle room to essentially fight Sukuna without much issue. But here's the other thing and the other possible saving grace for Gojo. We of course know that he has all of his abilities, etc. But he was in the prison realm and he can move. Time doesn't pass. You don't need food. You have stamina. He could have been training the entire time with nothing held back, and no one would be none the wiser, essentially. So Gojo could have gotten significantly stronger in there, and we just don't know it yet. That's the thing. We can't assume he was just static, sitting in a box, talking to himself for however long. And it would be something equivalent to the hyperbolic time chamber. As the angel puts it, Gojo could have lived 10,000 years, or what seemed to be 10,000 years in there, or it could have gone by in the blink of an eye. He could have learned so many things about Jujutsu sorcery and his own abilities that he's just now on another level. So when Gojo starts to put forward techniques like his hollow purple, red, blue, he could have learned them and mastered them on a completely new level with a completely new updated skill set. And so if his domain got stronger, he really could be in a position where he just trumps Sukuna off of the training he had from when he was inside the realm. But that's remained to be seen. We're going to find out probably fairly soon what Gojo did when he was inside the box, and when he gets out, you know, it could be a showdown. Now, I'm just throwing this in there. I don't think Kenjaku is going to be a huge factor. I think the side characters are going to have their bone to pick with him, and they're going to take care of Kenjaku. I don't see him as a Gojo level threat, and I'm going to do a separate video about that. But for right now, this main matchup between Sukuna and Gojo, I would give it to Gojo, likely, but there are some underlying facts if we come to discover them about Sukuna let's say he gets the rest of the fingers, and there's a time frame Gojo wasn't expecting, right? Because he wasn't expecting to be trapped for that long. I think then Sukuna can sweep out a win with one last statement, and that being that Maki said, and Mei Mei's little brother Ui Ui, would be that them trying to defeat Sukuna and Kenjaku is like trying to fight Gojo. Now, I'm not sure if they meant together fighting them is like trying to fight Gojo, but even if they did, that means that they compared a 15-finger Sukuna with very little understanding of Megumi's body, just learning it, to Gojo, even if you want to throw Kenjaku in there. So now imagine if Sukuna gets the other 5 fingers, gets to train, and gets the time frame for the fingers to grow exponentially stronger. That could be what throws a wrench in Gojo, and I think that could be the underlying mechanism that lets him essentially win over Gojo. But this is all speculation for now, so we're gonna have to stay tuned and see what happens and develops in the essentially developing stage of this final battle. So with those details explained, I hope you guys come to a conclusion of your own on who would win between Gojo and Sukuna. But if you have any issues with my understanding, my versus theory, just comment down below. We can talk in the Discord, and I'll get back to you.